The RICO statute was definitely created, I think back in 1970, a fellow by the name of DeBakey created it specifically to go after the mob. No question about that. It's certainly evolved over the years because the government obviously can use a law in any way they see fit. They've gone after Wall Street people with it and a lot of other people. So they'll use it outside of the mob. What's a little bit confusing here is
Michael Franzese was a captain in New York's Colombo crime family. He served 8 years for racketeering and extortion. And Anthony Ruggiano Jr. is the son of a Gambino crime captain who was locked up 4 different times for robbery, gambling, and yes, RICO. Michael and Anthony, welcome to both of you. And Michael, I said Franzese, and I think it's Franzese, so I will correct myself before we even get started. Thank you both so much for being here. I have so many questions for you. Let me start with this, and I'm going to open it up to the both of you, but Michael, I'm going to get you to start. For a lot of people, RICO is all about the mob. It's all about what you see on The Sopranos. It's those kinds of crimes. It's not the stuff that they see on tape where Diddy's beating his girlfriend up. But I know that you guys have had a chance to kind of look into this case. You've heard what I just said in the opening of this case. So do you think that this is RICO, or are you scratching your heads?
Well, first of all, you can say my name either way, Franzese or Franzese, so you're correct. But I will say, the RICO statute was definitely created, I think back in 1970, a fellow by the name of DeBakey created it specifically to go after the mob. No question about that. It's certainly evolved over the years because the government obviously can use a law in any way they see fit. They've gone after Wall Street people with it and a lot of other people. So they'll use it outside of the mob. What's a little bit confusing here is normally there is a criminal enterprise that's involved, a group of people. I had 3 racketeering indictments, 2 federal and 1 state. And in each case, it was the Franzese family, the Franzese group as part of an enterprise. And I had a lot of co-defendants. I didn't hear the government's opening statement on this to see how they tied this into a racketeering statute, because as far as I know, it's only Diddy on trial, and he's on trial alone. So are they claiming that he is a one-man enterprise? That's what's kind of confusing to me, because the charges against him can certainly stand alone. I don't think they need to be part of a racketeering indictment, but again, I'd have to know what the opening statement was and how they put that theory together that this could be under the RICO statute.
So you know what? I'll throw this in here, and Anthony, you can jump in. From the way I see things, what the prosecutors have tried to determine was that here's Diddy at the top of Bad Boy Records and the enterprise that he's created, the big businesses that he's created. He's got employees that he's paying as security. He's got employees like Cassie, who is supposed to be releasing music. He's got employees like assistants who he tells, you go and set up the freak offs and you go and get my drugs. And, you grab Cassie and bring her to this vacant building and threaten her with a lie detector test. So I think what they're trying to say is that he used his business and he used his corporate card from Bad Boy Enterprises and he used cash from the business plus assistants and employees to carry out a lot of the crimes that they're alleging one after the other, with these witnesses. So if I lay it out that way, Anthony, what do you think? Do you think this lines up with the RICO that you know?
My friends, I want you to picture this. You lock your doors at night, you set your alarm, right? You feel safe, you feel guarded. But let me ask you this, who's guarding your personal information like your social security number? Right now, it's probably sitting in some database that's already been hacked, and the bank's promising you security is practically gift wrapping it for these hoodlums that rob you. Bank of America, they just had another data breach, and they kept silent about it for months. In my world, we call that omerta, but at least we had a code. These companies, they wait an average of 277 days before telling you about a breach. That's 9 months that these criminals have all your data. Look, with cyber attacks happening daily, your personal information is probably already at risk. That's why I personally use Aura. After rebuilding my life post-prison, I'm not letting some faceless hacker take what I've worked so hard for. Aura alerts me immediately if my information's on the dark web, or if someone is trying to access my accounts, my social security number, or even my emails. Plus, this is a bonus, they back it up with $5 million in identity theft insurance. You know, these companies that offer free credit monitoring after the breach, it's like calling to tell me my front door's open after the thieves have already cleaned out my house. People, family is everything to me, so I want you to go to aura.com/family for 2 weeks free service. They'll already find out if your data is exposed before these companies are forced to tell you some 9 months later. Remember, it's better to have protection and not need it than to need protection and not have it. That's an offer you shouldn't refuse.
You know, I feel a lot like Michael. You know, I'm struggling with it too because my RICOs also, there was co-defendants. I read his indictment. I started reading his indictment today, and his business is the enterprise, and the people that worked for him were part of the conspiracy. So maybe they're unindicted co-conspirators, and they got immunity because, like Michael said, on my indictment, it said the United States of America versus, and then there was 8 names. And we all conspired to commit crimes. Diddy's alone. Who did he conspire with? Did he conspire by himself? Did he extort people? Yes, he did. Did he kidnap people? He held them against his will? Yes, he did. He brought people across state lines, which is a federal offense. But to be a RICO just on him, you know, it's hard for me to understand how that happens.
Yeah, and I do think that, I mean, listen, we got weeks and weeks left of just the prosecutor's case, but already we've seen one of the assistants who said he got immunity. And my feeling is that his second in command, Christina Coram, either she's going to plead the fifth or she's going to have been offered immunity or use immunity for her testimony. I do think you're right. It's kind of confusing without the conspirators, but my feeling is that right now, to get the testimony against the guy at the top, they may be offering them immunity. But like I said, we still have to find that out. I got this question for you, Michael. I opened the show by saying that I felt sad by sitting through a lot of today's testimony because this stylist, he just went over instance after instance of just vicious beating and control that Diddy had allegedly over Cassie, things he saw firsthand, things that he even tried to step in and stop by jumping on Diddy's back, you know, blood coming down Cassie's face during one of the beatings that Diddy allegedly turns around and says, "Look what you all made me do." And I wondered about a guy like that. Now that this is all coming out in the public, if Diddy's convicted, this is not the kind of behavior that I used to hear about with the mob. They beat up and kill guys, but they didn't beat up and kill girls all the time. Do you see a big difference here with the kind of behavior Diddy's accused of doing compared to the behavior of mobsters?
Oh, absolutely. Let me say this. I always take the position, you know, someone's innocent until proven guilty. That's just my position all the time. However, we have seen certain things. I think everybody has seen the hotel video where he was obviously beating her up. And the testimony has been absolutely despicable. And nobody in my former life would ever approve of something like that. And I think Anthony will vouch for that. We didn't beat up women. We didn't do things like that. We were taught to respect women in a big way, especially our families. So, you know, in our life, if you violated another made man's wife, daughter, sister, mother, you're in a lot of trouble. So we didn't stand for that in any way, shape, or form. And like I said, you know, the acts that are being described here are disgusting, despicable. You know, if somebody like that was in our former life, he wouldn't last, you know, quite honestly. So, you know, and again, I would love to hear, I believe that the defense is going to attack the RICO statute here. You said, you know, possibly there are witnesses that have been given immunity. Not possibly, 100%. I mean, that's how government builds cases. They go after people, they get them to cooperate, and they give them immunity. So like Anthony said, there's probably several unindicted co-conspirators here that all decided, hey, we're not going to take the fall, we're going to cooperate. Going to testify, and that's why they weren't indicted. So I would believe what Anthony said, that, you know, they're going to use the theory that you said, that the whole, you know, Bad Boy Records was a criminal enterprise. He was at the top of it. He used these other people to implement his criminal schemes. and that's how they charged him with RICO. But these acts are just, the real question is, how did this go on for 20 years? 20 years this was going on. A guy as high profile as that, and I've said this before, and nobody gets charged for it. It's allowed to continue for 20 years. There's no question that people knew that this was going on. There were high profile people involved. How does something like this go on for 20 years? Anthony, in our former life, this wouldn't last a year. People would be down in.
Definitely.
Yeah, you know what, Anthony, I'm gonna get you to dovetail on that because I want to know if Diddy's convicted and he ends up spending the rest of his life in a federal prison, given what we know now, the filth of his behavior, the absolute filth of his behavior when it came to how he treats women. One woman, absolutely. The others, so far, it's just an accusation. How will he fare behind bars?
Well, I have two scenarios. If the BOP buries him in like a Marion or the Supermax in Colorado, he'll do a terrible bit. But if he goes to, my opinion, if he goes to a regular federal prison, he's going to be fine because the kids there, the people there, he has a lot of money. He's still, he's in the music business. Everybody wants to be a hip hop artist. He's going to do fine in prison. He's going to do a good bit. He's got a ton of money, and he's going to do fine in prison unless the BOP buries him in a Supermax. That's the only way he's going to have issues. Other than that, I don't think he's going to have a problem with a certain group of people. Maybe mob guys might shun him. I'm sure people might throw, innuendos at him. He might have a fight or two, but overall, I think he's going to do fine in there because of who he is and all his money. Just like Madoff did fine
Anthony,
in there. All these other criminals.
Tell me why you think he would have a tougher time at a Supermax. What would be the difference, and what would that tougher time look like?
He'll be isolated. You get an hour a day. He'll be locked in a cell 23 hours a day. He'll have no rep. He'll have no contact to the outside world. He'll have nobody to talk to. He'll be just alone, isolated. And that's hard on a person to be isolated like that.
But you know what? Maybe if you got a target on your back because of the way you allegedly used women as punching bags for 20 years, maybe it would be better to be isolated than the alternative. Can't thank you both more for being so candid about your past and helping us to sort of understand what's at stake in this federal courtroom. I'd love to have you both back. Michael Franzese and Anthony Ruggiano, thank you so much. Let me start here. And actually, Michael, I'm going to give the first one to you. The feds typically stack RICO cases, right? They line up the predicate acts, the underlying acts of crimes, and then they sort of lay them all out by, bringing witness after witness or pieces of evidence out. I want to ask you how damaging you think Bana was on the stand today, talking about being dangled over a 17th-story balcony.
Well, listen, it sounds terrible. Obviously, I'm not in the courtroom evaluating her as she gives her testimony. But look, all of this is adding up. It seems like these witnesses are corroborating one another, the same kind of behavior with all of them. I mean, it's very damaging. I also wanted to mention something. You think it's so out of the ordinary that, he's being charged in racketeering. The only thing out of the ordinary for me is that he's the only defendant. Normally you have multiple defendants, but remember, they use this against Wall Street. They use it against our ex-president in Georgia. They try to, they accused him of racketeering. So you give the government a statute, if they can expand upon it, they'll use it in every way that they can. But what's really puzzling here is it seems that most of these witnesses were given immunity. So some of them might be unindicted co-conspirators that would make up the enterprise along with Diddy. It's just that they agreed to cooperate and they're not indicted. I mean, that's my take on it so far.
That's a really good point, Sammy. Jump on that, because Bana was the third person by my count to be given immunity for her testimony. And each of those three that got up there, they all said they did not want to be there. They did not want to be a part of this. They weren't looking to put Diddy away. They just didn't want anything to do with him. Do you think that jurors see that? Do you think they see immunity as something that's really important?
No, I agree with Michael 100%. They all got immunity because they're cooperating. They're all part of the enterprise, and that's exactly what happens. When I cooperated, I was part of the enterprise, and I was cooperating, and nothing that I said could be used against me, and that's exactly what's happening here. Same exact thing. So they're all part of the
And do you
enterprise.
think, do you think that's going to amount to RICO in the jurors' minds? Are they going to see that as racketeering?
No. And I don't think they're going to see anything wrong with her dangling 17 stories out off a building. I agree with Michael. I think it's horrible. It's disgusting. But I don't see it as a RICO thing. He was mad at her. They're not even saying why he was mad at her. Could have been an argument. How is that part of a criminal enterprise?
That's a good point. So, Michael, how about this? When it came time for cross-examination of Bana, I lost count. So did the NewsNation reporters who were in the courtroom taking notes. The number of times she said, "I don't remember." How powerful do you think that is for jurors who start to think, well, maybe your story isn't so strong if you just can't remember conveniently on cross?
Yeah, I think that goes against the witness. But again, I've been following this in the paper every day, and I just think the totality of these witnesses claiming the same type of behavior, they seem to be corroborating one another, and the behavior, at least as it's being brought out, is really kind of horrendous. I think the most damaging thing that the jurors are going to remember, they saw this video with Cassie, and so they know that he's very capable of this behavior. I think the attorney Garagos had to get up there and say, look, that was a bad act, but it was more of a domestic violence thing. It wasn't RICO. So it's really going to depend on how capable, how competent the summation is by Garagos with the RICO. That's what it's going to come down to. Hey, he did some despicable things, but it's not racketeering. And if he can convince the jury of that, and then they have a shot. Other than that, I think it's a tough case. They were talking a lot about him taking the stand. The only time you take the stand is when you're desperate. Any attorney will tell you, you never take the stand unless, hey, we got a bad case here. You may as well go up there and try to help yourself. Normally, you don't want to take this stand.
Wow. Oh, yeah. Listen, I think we all know by this point that Diddy has a bit of a God complex, and if not a God complex, a king complex, and a hair trigger anger management problem. Sammy, because of that, do you think it is the dumbest idea ever if Diddy took the stand? Because it would be real easy for those feds to get under his skin real fast.
Yeah, I agree. You never take the stand in your case. Like Michael said, as the last resort, your case is dead. You try to revive it and take the stand, but it would be a bad move. But I don't think he has to do that. I'm becoming more and more. I understand the RICO law. I saw a lot of people it was used against. I don't understand how they're using it in this case. What's the enterprise?
Okay, I'll give you an example. All right, I'll give you an example. The enterprise is that he's the CEO at the top of Bad Boy Records, and he allegedly uses all of his staff members, his chief of staff, Christina Coram, his bodyguard, D-Rock, and the other bodyguards to carry out a lot of these crimes, like this one is alleged. A hotel worker said he was paid $100,000 in cash in a paper bag to make some video of a felony assault go away, which you could say is obstruction of justice. So there's Diddy allegedly using his staff because they, according to the witness, were involved in the whole setup and planning of this, the non-disclosure agreement he had to sign. Michael, jump in on that. Do you see that as evidence of obstruction of justice, one of the predicate acts to prove RICO?
Yes, but there again, I think the challenge here is the lawyer is going to get up and say, well, where's the racketeering enterprise? An enterprise is one person all of a sudden. I think he's going to have to say that these other people were unindicted co-conspirators, or maybe he won't use that word, but he's going to have to say that these other people helped him carry out this pattern of racketeering that caused all of this stuff. Because to me, it doesn't make sense to have one person, be indicted for RICO and saying that he's the criminal enterprise. Normally, the criminal enterprise is made up of a number of people. Every one of my cases was that way, and I had 3 of them. And every case that I known, against all of my former associates, there was always a number of people that were part of the enterprise.
Yeah, we still have a couple to go. We haven't heard from D-Rock, and we haven't heard from the chief of staff either, Christina Coram. So that still could be to come. So that means you guys have to come back. Michael Franzese and Sammy the Bull Gravano, thank you both so much for your insight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, too.